Right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the GSC Virtual Conference 2024. My name is Chris Knowles, and I'm Assist Prog at Vitali and co-chair of the 102 working stream. So this session is all about ISPF and is being presented by Dan. Dan loves hearing your questions, so please post any questions you might have in the chat, and I can cascade these to Dan at the end of the session. Also, feedback is well received and allows us organisers and the presenters to further improve the experience for you all in future conferences. So I'll pop a link in the chat in a moment, which I'll invite you all to check out at the end if that's okay. But without further ado, I will now hand over to Dan.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be. So this session is the best of 3 different classes that I've given in the past at GSA UK. And those are available on the YouTube site if you want to see the full session, but I tried to squeeze in what I saw was the top 10 here that I want to cover today. I was able to squeeze it down from 3 hours of the material down to 2 hours, and now I think I've got it down to around 50 minutes. So I will be going pretty quickly. As Chris mentioned, I will take questions at the end, and I should have some time for that. There is a handout that I uploaded this morning of all the slides, and so they should be a pretty good reference after the fact here. So without further ado, let us get going. I'm going to be doing a lot of examples of execs and edit macros in Rex, and they will be on GitHub. I had some problems with GitHub this morning, so the repo's out there, but it doesn't have any parts. So I'll get that resolved after the session here. All right, number 1. Other ways to get it, edit, view, and browse. So you're all familiar with this panel. There have been some changes recently in the edit screen here. You can now put in a ZOS Unix file along with all the other things. The thing that's missing now is the workstation file that you used to be able to edit files on your workstation. There was a security issue, and unfortunately, they took that good feature away. We'll talk about line command tables. And you can now do editing of ASCII and UTF-8 data. So as much as I love edit, I hardly ever go to option 2 anymore. I'm either using 3.4 or more commonly, I'll use the ISPF services to get to these things. So these are examples of Rex and CLIS versions of how to edit a data set from Rex. And the edit model command can be used to bring up examples of all the different ISPF services in multiple different languages. So here's just an example of one that I use for editing my JCL library. I can just do TSO-EJ and bring up a member list, or provide a pattern or a member name and go there. So whenever you're running any ISPF application, you want to be in the ISP exec address space. And then depending on whether I provide a member or not, it's either going to edit with a data set in the member or just the data set. So pretty straightforward. So I have a number of these that go after just single libraries of my own. So speaking of ISPF libraries, if you recall on the top of the edit screen, you have the library, which shows project and multiple groups and a type. And that allows for you to edit concatenations of different libraries, all with the same format as far as sizes and that. But you can then edit, so you can see your dev, your test, your staging, your production libraries, for example, all at once. So again, we're going to use ISP exec. For these types of calls, we're going to use what's called an element init service, and that sets up a handle between this data ID and whatever information we set up here. And then instead of referencing the data set, we just represent or enter the data ID, and the member. And whenever you do an LM init, we have to do an LM free just to free up that handle. Also about ISPF libraries and this next example, which is editing a concatenation of data sets. Any changes you make will be stored in the first data set. So in our previous example, it would be the dev library. So you don't have to use the project and the group structure where the project and type are the same for all your data sets. Excuse me, this one is a small version, but you can also edit up to 16 different data sets. In this case, I'm allocating a DD name that I made up to these 2 data sets. And then for our element init, we're going to associate this data ID with a DD name. And this is a real helpful feature if you want to work with VIO data sets. It's since you don't typically have the name as readily as you might have the DD that you've created. And then same thing as before, we're going to edit that data ID and member and then free it up. So for browse and view, there are services for that as well. And it's simply changing from edit to view on all the examples will get you there. And for browsing, there's no confirm option, so you just remove that option. But it's very simple to add these to your different applications and tools. There's also an ePDF primary command now, which from any command line, you can jump into edit or view or browse. So for that, you just type ePDF on the command line, following by your data set, and you'll go into edit. If you include a V or a B parameter, then you'll get view and browse instead. And there are a number of different options. Many of them relate to edit and view, like recovery and macros and that type of thing. Also unique is this can be run from TSO ready. So it will fire you up ISPF and you'll go into edit. And then when you leave, you're back to TSO ready, which is kind of a unique service. If you've used SDSF before, you may have used the SB and SE and SJ line commands. And these use the edif, vif, and brif interface services. These aren't available from Rex or CList or any interpreted language. It needs to be a compiled language. But you provide the read and write routines. And so in SDSF cases, you can, they're just providing the spool output and the JCL that was used to submit the job. Number 2. Let's go over some edit and view line commands. Before we get started, I want to just to refresh you on the way it determines where the line command ends. So if you put a space after it, it's obvious for that, but it uses backspacing or backscanning and cursor position to determine it. So down here, I've typed D3, and my intention is to delete 3 lines. But if I move my cursor over a couple, I will get 315 lines deleted. And likewise, if I just delete that one, it will shift the 500 over, and it will see it as 3,500. And that's not as big a deal, but I've been using my mouse quite a bit. So this is also a beware of the mouse, not this mouse, that mouse. Most of the emulators now will support using your mouse. My primary button is set up for enter. That's kind of by default. You can set up your secondary mouse button as end, and then I use my F8 and F7 as the scroll wheel. And so I can fly through member lists and data very quickly with this. The only downside I've found is what I'll commonly do is I'll do a D3 and then maybe shift my mouse over here and double click. Let's go back there, sorry. Double click, and that will delete 31,000 lines of data. So if you're not familiar with a recovery, just turn recovery on, REC. That will save you a lot of headaches. All right. This copy and move has been around for a long time. Some of you might not be aware that it can also have a sequence on the targets, so you can get multiple copies copied at one time. And then the overlay command, I'll show you that as an example. I use this a lot for building up lists. Here I've got a bunch of SQL tables, and I want to copy this line over all these other ones here. And I can use the move and overlay to do that. We can do a column shift, move that over, and a text flow, and flow it all back up nice and pretty. There are some new features for the move and copy command, or newer, in that it allows you to now add you can do multiple targets for a copy. So a demonstration is better. So here I can copy this line, and I'm going to copy it after this and keep going and copy it before this one twice. And then finally I end with just a plain A or B, whatever I want. And the same thing works for the move. And then here's the results of all those changes at once. A couple other handy line commands. The MD line command has been around for a long time. It's a make data, and you can use it to convert message note and information lines to data. I use it frequently. I'll type the calls line command and then change that calls line to a real data, and then it allows me to shift it over to where I want to look for things. And can also use it to merge changes and do selective undo, which I'll demonstrate a little bit later. HX line command is newer. It allows you to, in this case, I've got all these hex strings here, but I can't see them. I can turn hex on, and just for that line, it will show me the hex instead of turning it on for the entire member. And you're probably aware you can update the information down here as well. And when you hit enter, it actually reflects that. Now, it only shows in vertical format, okay? When you do a hex on or just hex, you'll go into hex vertical mode. There's also a hex data mode. If you say hex data instead of things being vertical above each other, you'll get them going left and right, which is real handy for cutting out a string or pasting in a string of hex digits and then having it show up. Hey, number 3. So when I do the ada.z last class, there's a certain primary commands that I say you should know inside and out. And these are the guys. And I think for general editing and writing macros as well, if you know these inside and out, you're well on your way to making your life easier. And find really is the guts of everything. I mean, the command processor, you can put things in any order. You should be able to look at these and hopefully you'll be able to recognize, oh, okay, yeah, that's what he's doing. But these should be all pretty familiar, possibly not these. The editor now supports regular expressions for find. So this one, for example, I can look for a DSN or a DS name followed by disp equal on a line, and it will find all those occurrences. This one here I use as part of a ifs macro that I have that will pop out all the conditional logic for JCL. And you can get pretty crazy with regular expressions. This actually finds valid member names. Picture strings have been around since the beginning. They also support wildcarding, and they're simpler in many respects. And I use them probably more frequently than regular expressions. Here, this one is just I'm looking for things that are 3 alphabetic characters followed by 3 numeric, followed by the letter Z or Z for you guys. The difference between the picture strings and regular expressions is that I can also use these as targets. So I'm able to do a change all lowercase characters to uppercase characters for certain column ranges, which is really handy. Regular expressions have their own set of special characters. I won't be going into all of those. Again, a lot more capability, but with it comes some complexity. So check out this site here. I found that to be kind of helpful if you're getting started with those. Excluded lines are a great feature of the editor. There are 2 primary commands that work with those now. Flip and hide X. So here I've done a exclude all, and then I find all my A's to pop out them from exclude status. And if I want the inverse of that, I can just do the flip command, and it will show me the other lines. And obviously you can flip back and forth. You can also do a hide X now, which is extremely helpful. And what happens is instead of having these lines displayed, messages showing up, it just crunches it all down. And this is where the excluded lines are, these underscores. That's where they represent. This is also real handy for now cutting and pasting from the workstation. And then you can use the reset hide to get back to your normal status. One of my favorite commands is compare. You can use it to compare all kinds of different things, whatever you're adding to a Unix file or different PDS member, etc. If you're in a concatenation, so either a DD name concatenation or an ISPF library, you can use the comp next, and that will compare the member you're editing to the same member farther down in the concatenation. So you can see what differences exist between those 2 levels. So here's just a quick example. I'm just comparing the 2 here. Anything that has a information line here, this is showing that it's only existing in the other set of data. Same thing with here. And these with the labels are the ones that are in this data set or this member, but not in the other one. You can also use a compare X. You can either do it initially when you put your compare or just after it. And that can give you a view. Here I'm going to do a comp X. And it crunches it down to only the changes. And in this case, I'm using 0 context lines. And you can also specify between 0 and 12 context lines. And here's an example. I typically run with 1 context line to give me some idea of where these changes are existing. So you're busy working. Hopefully this volume's not too high. You get a phone call, someone slides over and chit-chats, or the fire drill goes off, and you're wondering, okay, where was I when I last was editing? A great feature that I use all the time, I use splat more than probably the normal compare even. What this allows you to do is to compare the current edit session to what's been saved on disk. And I'll show you an example of using this for selective undo. So you do a comp splat. And so I was editing this thing for an hour. One of the first things I did was I got rid of this step here. And then I've made all kinds of changes after this. Undo is not going to be too helpful because it's going to pop everything off the stack from the bottom. What I would like to do is just restore this step, realize I need it after the fact. You can use MD8 in this case to make those back into regular data lines. And that's extremely helpful if you accidentally delete things. Compare uses Super C under the covers. And if you've had much experience with Super C, I could probably do my next one. Masterclass could be on Super C and search for. But there's gobs of features that you can use. And if you use the comp command with no parameters, you'll get this options panel showing. And this is where you can set how many context lines you want for that, the compacts. There's some other things you can do, case insensitivity, yeah, easy for me, insensitivity. But if you use the specified data set, you can put in process options and statements, everything that Super-C can do. Cut and paste has been around for a long time. There's some details there, but the one thing I want to point out is it now supports multiple clipboards. So instead of just having the default clipboard, I can have up to 10 other ones by default. Your system programmer can make that even more. Here I'm using a cut and I'm using a label here. I'm going to do I don't want to cut the whole thing, and I don't want to have to go down and leave the command line. I'm just going to say I want from .a to .zl, which is always the last line in the data set. .zf is always the first in the data set. And so this will grab those lines and put it into a clipboard called C1. Then you can use cut dis or cut dis to display your clipboard manager. And you can see here that C1 is there, but I've done a bunch of other ones previously in my clipboard. Let me go back to this real quick. You notice here I also have a calls line on the top. In addition to the calls line command that's been around for a long time, a more recent addition is a calls primary command, and that will keep that on the command line. And this edset is another command to bring up your edit setting. And you can specify a user initial macro, but I know some people that will just put the calls there. So every time they're in edit, they'll have a call string up on top. Another one that's kind of helpful if you want to get one more line of real estate for editing. If you're not interested in the action bars up on top for your mouse, you can remove that there. Another feature that many people are aware of is using the ampersand as a prefix for the line command, or sorry, for the primary command area in edit and view. So it will retain the command on the command line, so you can just keep on hitting enter. And I'll show an example of using it to align columns, but I also use it to narrow down data if I want to exclude ABCs from the data, and then I see, oh, there's some XYZs there. Let me narrow that down. I just change this on the end and keep on narrowing down until I find something that might be strange. You can also, I mentioned the AK line command for doing multiple targets for a line copy. That doesn't exist for the primary command copy and move, but you can use this kind of feature to do a similar thing. You copy it down, put your A, hit enter, and scroll down and hit A, and you can keep on doing that. It's a little faster than using the retrieve key. So here I'm going to change all commas to space comma in 2 through 9. And when I hit enter, it changes all those, shifts it over, and I hit it again, and I keep hitting it until finally there's no more changes. I can then change it to a different range and do something similar to that. Number 4. Let's switch gears a little bit, talk about data set list. So there have been commands that have been around for a long time. I won't go through those. Here's more that have been around. I've always been able to repeat the previous line. Now, like SDSF, you can do a block command for repeating commands. There's also an allocate line command, which can allocate a data set based on the one that's in the list. You can copy and move things, and you can also exclude lines from the data set list. So the X will exclude them, and then you have different flavors to bring them back. This next one I'll demonstrate in a little bit. It's the RA to add something to a reference list. You can also reset member statistics now. And then there are the couple different flavors of Super C and Search For that you can use directly from 3.4. So here are just some examples. Here I'm going to view multiple data sets. I can exclude that data set. Whenever you're entering commands, either the base commands, or if you're writing your own, or for TSO commands that you're going to run against this, the slash represents the fully qualified data set name and allows you to put a member name after it if you like. You can also tack it on to the end if you're so inclined. So here's this allocate statement, and this is kind of a unique animal. It doesn't follow the normal conventions. You have to provide the new data set on the same line. So because of that, you might have to add some quotes around there. My preference would be if they would have created a pop-up, they let you go to see another panel. Then you can also, as I mentioned, run any TSO command or write your own to do a certain function. The RA, again, is the reference list edition. And so when I do that, it's going to add that data set, and I can name a list. In this case, I'll just say test, but I can add this data set, and I could add some SYS1 data set. It doesn't matter. All different ones I could add to the same list. And this is a real helpful feature for organizing your work and not getting overwhelmed by all the data sets that might be out there. I mentioned you can write your own line command. These are included on Git as well. This is something I had written before Search For existed, and it does a find with an edit macro under the covers, and we'll look for the first one in this whole list. I'm using the block format, and the first one that has something, it will find that. I can look at that, hit in, it'll go on to the next ones. In this case, it was just a single one that was found. Primary commands also have been around for a long time, obviously. One that I want to point out is the save command, which allows you to save the information from the dataset list and the attributes to either the list data set, or if you provide a parameter, it will create a data set with a user ID with a .datasets suffix on it. Some more recent commands, DSL set allows you to bring up settings. The exclude and find primary commands allow you to look for things within the data or exclude things from the list. The member command, or just the M, will search all the partition data sets for a certain member name or pattern. Search For will go after the data. And you can tailor your 3.4 screen, providing different colors if you like. And that's with the LC primary command. And if you don't wish to do the round robin to get to the other views, round robin with your left and right scrolling, you can now go directly to these different views with the primary commands. Number 5. So 3.4 is a great way to get into the dataset list, but there are other ways now. There's a DS list primary command from any command line. You can give it some level information if you choose, but more frequently I use it to bring up a reference list that I've created, again, using that RA line command. If you just put DS list, it'll specify or show all the different reference lists. There are 2 services that also let you work with this dataset list information. The first one will just bring back the information to your exec, and the second one here will actually do a display of that, show a dataset list. So here's that result of going into DS list my, shows it as this is my list. Again, these data sets don't have to have the first qualifier being the same. They can be completely unrelated. And This is probably the most hidden command in ISPF. It's ref open D, which allows you to show your different reference lists. You can also edit them, you can change them, you can remove qualifiers from the end and actually have a single entry bring up, a whole range of data sets. This first service, the LMD list, again, just brings back information. We have a couple services that we have to do to, again, similar to LM and NIT. We're going to set up these relationships, a handle between some information. And then the LMD list service itself has these options. And because we have an init, we always have to have a free. We'll show an example of that. So this is going to display all of my GDG data sets. And it will, using the double asterisk that tells 3.4 to don't care how many levels are in between here. So this could bring up from 0 to many levels in between. I'm asking for statistics, and I don't want the status bar to pop up while it's looking for that statistic information. But I then just do an LMD init to get this handle, and then later I'll relate this or use this list ID in the call. And because this can bring back multiple things, we're just going to loop in here, and I'm going to do a say. And when we're done, we're going to free up the list itself, and then we're going to free up that association. And this is the end result of those, just spitting them out to the terminal. More recently, we added the feature to be able to bring back a relative or the real data set name for a relative GDG number. There are other ways to do that, but this is kind of a nice straightforward way. So again, I'm looking for that particular information, and I just do a single call because it's only going to bring back one data set, and I'm going to spit that out on the screen when I find it. So this is real handy if you work with GDGs a lot. So this last example, I mentioned the save command earlier. It's sometimes nice to be able to get the data set information for a particular group of data sets into a data set that you can then manipulate either with the editor or maybe read it in or process it in a different way. So we're going to specify this group, and we're going to do a save is what we're requesting. Again, it's just a single call because one call will cause everything to be done. And then if I've specified the group, that means it's going to go to this other data set instead of the ISPF list data set. So I'm going to ask to edit it. And then here's the end result of that. Shows all your data sets with the information. I can scroll left and right to bring up the stuff farther over. But I also have a line command, or not a line command, a macro that I've written to simulate the logic that 3.4 uses as far as substitution of slashes. And so in this case, I would like to convert all these data sets into a hmigrate command. And that does that trick. You could do it, whatever you provide as a command, it will reformat it that way. The LMD disp service, on the other hand, instead of just bringing things back, will actually display a member list. It's much simpler. We just give it a level of what we're looking for. You can specify a different level or a different view initially. And then it's just a matter of calling that service with the view that you want. And this is the results of that. Again, all these different examples will be on the GitHub repository. Number 6. We talked about member lists or DS lists. Let's talk about some member list stuff. We'll just do it once, not twice. There's 2 different flavors of member lists. The basic one, just from browse edit view, allows you to do an S primary command or line command. And then there's the enhanced one that's used for 3.1. And if you go to edit from dataset list, for example, and it has an up to 9-character line command area, which allows you to do not just those single character ones or the provided line commands, but you can write your own for that as well. These have been around for a long time. These are more recent ones. I can do a copy or move of a member. I can reset member statistics. I can submit a job right from the member list. And if you have a more involved command, you can use a T, which will give you a prompt to give you a couple lines of things to work with. So here's an example of my own command here called my command, and I can provide a parm, and I can run it again on multiple lines with the equal command. There's no / for member lists. When the enhanced member list first came out, I quickly wrote this S line command because in the normal 3.1, if you try to do an S like you expecting from the other basic member lists, it will give you an error. So this just goes into view in that case. Primary commands have been around. Again, there's a save for member lists. This one for enhanced member lists, I'm not sure if everybody's aware of that, but you can add a command after this, the last parameter, and I can submit all members beginning with AB, or I can delete all members that are ending in gen very quickly. So a single command can process multiple members. These are relatively newer ones. I can filter the member list now. I only want certain sizes or certain user IDs. I can do that. I can find a string within the member name or even the other columns if you're looking for a particular date. You can do a search for. That will go against and search all the members. If you don't give it a parm, it will give you a pop-up display panel where you can specify more than just one search for string if you want. There's a color list utility, MLC, like the LC for dataset lists, and the MLS for enhanced member lists allow you to provide an additional initial sort other than the member name. So I typically run with this. I use option 6 is so change descending. So I see all my most recent changes. Again, this only affects the enhanced member list, unfortunately. So here's the result of that. You can also, if you see these, I have highlighted these fields. They're point and shoot. I can use my mouse to just double click on these fields and use them to sort, which is unique to to member lists. Just like dataset lists, there's other ways to get to member lists. We have an list service to bring back information to the exec. This one is very involved. I won't be going over that one. It's like 13 pages of documentation, but you can, it's more powerful. You can display and process your own commands. And then there's a mem list, which just brings up a member list. So first one here, similar again to the dlist service. I'm going to say I want this data set. And I'm looking for anything that has an A in any member. And I'm going to do an element init here to do this association for that data set. This can also work with concatenations of data sets as well. I do a little scrolling there, and then I'm just looping through the member data and spitting it out. This then frees that member list as well. And this is the results of that one. Like the dataset list one, we can do a save of member list data. Works similarly. I'm going to just call the LMM list service for the save, and then again, free the list up. And that's going to go to a data set called .members. So when I run this, I get this parm live members. I can, again, scroll left and right. And I have another macro that I have that converts these member names into IV copy statements. And so then you can do a cut and move those into JCL member if you so desire. The mem list is a nice feature for bringing up a member list, either a 1 or 9 character support. And it also allows, instead of having to need this S command that I created, you can say that I want an S to default to view or rename or whatever function you want it to do. So again, specifying some stuff on top and just a simple memlist service call with the information that you want. And here are the results of that. Okay, we have one more list to cover. These are option 317 is the directory list. Shows you the ZOS Unix files that are associated on your system. There are a bunch of line commands that are supported by that. You can do the ASCII and UTF-8 for here and more. You notice there's an RA line command here as well, so you can do reference lists for the directory list as well. It provides both equals and double slash. Number of different primary commands, again, very similar to what you've seen in the other lists. And there are other ways to get to the directory list. A couple I'll show you, sorry about that. A couple I'll show you in a second here, but let me point out instead of DS list, there's a UD list command, and it works the same way. So I can provide a list that I created with the RA line command to bring up, any list of data, any list of files that I want. There's only a single service related to this. It's the dir list, which actually displays a directory list. So from option 2, you can put in a path name or the Unix file here, and you go to 317. Likewise, 3.4, you can do the same thing. And then the UD list from anywhere. And the dir list service is probably the most flexible one to work with. It gives you the most capability. You can easily do your own line commands and do overrides. Let me show you a quick example of that. So it's pretty straightforward. I just do the whatever directory. I can say, oh, I'm only interested in these attributes showing up on the screen. And then I can provide my own list line command processor and say that I want it to handle, I want to get control when either the browse command or this custom LL command is used. And then a simple call to that will display the dir list. The line command processor, you can get some information from the shared pool as far as what the command is, etc. I did a little scrolling here. This allows me to get control when there's a browse command is done, but then I still let ISPF then handle it after the fact. And the LL line command, I'm doing this function, and I'm just going to spit out a different message in this case, and by putting it into the shared pool again. So here we're going to run those guys, and I get into browse. I did get control, but I'm letting browse just handle it normally. And then here's our message for all done. Okay, we still have some time here. My favorite subject is edit macros, and they are ISPF dialogues that run in the edit and view environment. And you can display panels, you can do tailored file tailoring, any kinds of services, but also have access to primary and line command functions. There's 100 different options there. The simple one here is just something I use after I run compares to clean things up. Gets rid of the excluded lines, get rid of the labels, etc. And back to like that. This is just a simple list of commands, basically. Every macro starts with an ISRedit macro statement. And then I'm running 2 commands. This will take care of the excluded lines and special lines, and this will take care of the labels. A little more involved is the steps macro. Again, all these examples are available at GitHub. Will pop out just the steps for a particular member, and it uses the hidex command to do that. So we run steps, and it crunches down and just shows me all my members that I have there, how many steps. This one, again, we start with ISRedit macro. User state, I can't go into a lot of details on there, but it saves information. So you're not affecting the end user from what they saw before coming into the macro. It's a kind of a do no harm kind of thing. But if you do a find, it's possible that the user had changed their bounds and they were only looking at certain columns. If you do a find after that, you're only going to be looking within the bounds. So you want to clear out the bounds. I'm going to exclude all lines, find all character space exec. So this character string is exactly uppercase exec. You won't find any lowercase ones. I use the find counts to find out how many lines I popped out. There might be some things with comments, so I'm going to exclude the comments, do a little math, and then do this hidex. And then I'll restore the user state back so that the bounds change that I made potentially isn't going to affect the end user. And then I'm going to use an ISPF service to set a message, information message. Okay, the next one I want to talk about is going to use some labels. Labels are unsung heroes, especially helpful for edit macros. You can label any line that you want, just can't start with a Z. I mentioned these guys here. This one also is available in normal edit, and these 3 here are specifically for macro usage. And labels can be used on all these different primary commands. So you can cut certain range, you can sort all the lines except your heading line, for example. You can submit part of a data set. Very, very helpful. Labels I use all the time. So this is going to show differences between 2 different lines, and I've indicated those with a .new and .old, and we're going to do mark diff, and it's going to go through character by character and compare and show me the changes with this information line. I can't see too many changes there myself. We're going to use the hx line command to show us just these 2 lines. And now I can see that, okay, this is a G and not a Q, and we've got some hex digits in there. Sometimes you might want to use the cursor position to determine what line you want to process. And this inline macro will help in that regard. So here I'm positioning my cursor down on the line I want to expand and hit type in inline. It's going to go out and read this data set and bring it in here. It's going to comment out the original, wrap a DD splat around things. So I can maybe do a temporary modification of this without affecting the main data set. Macros can be used to call other macros. So you can do a compare. I have a generic comp DSN, and I have a comp JCL and a comp source and all kinds of things that use the same generic macro. So comp JCL is going to compare my private member of this production job to what's in production and show me the differences. This is we'll skip over this part, but it's just grabbing out the different parameters and handling X. Then depending on if a member name is sent, it's going to do one of the 2 here. And then for the callers of this, it's just simply create a member, whatever you want it, and give it the other data set name that you want to compare against. All right, I think we're hopefully doing all right on time. We have some line command edit macros. Initially, only primary commands were supported. You can now trigger macros by doing line commands. There are a couple other steps. You have to set up define this line command table and then reference it on the edit panel in the services. So here's the 316 for creating or editing a table. This is what it looks like here. Got three different ones that I've defined: a SPY, CE, and a do. And then these are the associated macros that are going to run when I enter those line commands. This first one, for writing macros, this is relatively new. You can do an EM SPY, and it will let you see under the covers where you are as you're running the macro. So here's our steps macro. I'd like to look at things after the find and after the exclude. And so I can do those, and it will just add those lines in there. It uses a process range to get the lines that I need to process. It's only a single one. I'm going to bring back the line number that I'm working with. And then I'm going to build this string up here with any indentation and do the final insert of that line. And then this is what happens when you run the steps macro now with that ISREM SPY. It's a quasi edit session. You can do scrolling, you can do finds, but it's very helpful to determine, oh, this is where my cursor is. That's especially when you're doing finds and changes. That's very helpful. The do line command supports the block format, yes, the do command. And what it does is just wraps a do and end around whatever lines I've selected here. All right, lastly, other edit macro goodies. Real quickly, I don't keep on rewinding things. Initial edit macros can be used. They run before the edit panel is displayed, and you can do all kinds of things like setting up tools that require users to enter data a certain way, because you can capture the save and end commands to make sure that happens. I have a edit macro mask change facility that's out on CBT and Git that you can use to edit up to 4 data sets, do mask changes against things, runs either in background or foreground, all kinds of nice help. But if you want to write your own, you can use these kind of tools here. We have a JCL procedure, the exec, and an edit macro are the 3 pieces you'll need. This is the JCL procedure, which allows you to define what the data sets you're going to be running with. It's going to be running in TSO batch. Here we're going to run that proc, editing this data set, and this is the exec that's going to get control to run that. And it runs with an initial edit macro. And the key here is the initial edit macro has to do a cancel or end before it finishes, or when it finishes, because you can't display panels in batch. Lastly, we have PF key macros. They're not really macros, but you can use your PF keys by defining things. You can put multiple commands in. You can use the colon prefix to use line commands as in your PF keys, which is extremely helpful. So how are we doing on time? Do we have much time for comments?
Yeah, we got a couple of minutes left for questions. I don't know if you've got access to the chat there, Dan.
Okay.
You've got a comment in there.
Okay. Yep. I've seen Doug Nadell, who used to be on the development team, had written a Rex reformatter years ago too. If you're interested in posting where you can go to it, why don't you hang around at the end here, Neil, and we can converse, or send me your email address just personally, please. All right, if we've got, what's our time look like? I've got
Got 4 minutes.
okay. Well, if there are any other questions, I've got a little bonus for you.
Go for it.
All right, ISPF now supports up to 32 split screens. Out of the box, you get 8. And you can use, you can set up this dialog test Z start variable and have multiple things start at one time. And you can use a swap bar to toggle between those if you want to use the swap bar. So here's an example. I'm going to start ISPF, go to option 2, start 3.4, start option 6, go to the UD list, and then swap back to the second one. So after that's all done, it looks like this. I'm on 3.4. I have an edit session down here, and I can use my mouse and just click on here if I have this swap bar set up, turned on, and just click between these. If you need to have different profiles for different kind of, I don't know, different days or different kind of to work, you can set up other variables and just reference that when you start up ISPF, ISPF mine or PDF mine to get to those. And you've got 32 sessions now, split screens. It'd be nice to get rid of all those at once. And you can use the equal X all command, and it will close everything down that it's able to do and bring you back to TSO ready. So with that, that is all. Here's an exec that will allow you to quickly set up this and just toss that profile data set. Sorry, profile variable into your profiles. All right. If there are no other questions, please submit your feedback. It's extremely important. Constructive comments are always welcome. I'm always looking to improve things. High marks are always appreciated as well. So I thank you for spending time with me. And if you've got, I'll hang around for a couple more minutes if you have some other questions or you want to chat.
Yeah, then if you can go back to your previous screen so I can take a screenshot of that for the swap bar.
That one?
Yeah. Let me quickly grab that because that's useful.
Okay. Well, that's also going to be on GitHub once I get it pushed
Amazing.
up there as well. So
Cool, I've done that. Thanks for that. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, we'll give it another minute, see if any questions come in.
all right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Great session. Yeah, thanks for joining everyone today. Again, thanks, Dan, for telling us a bit more about ISPF and all that functionality. I've learned a lot from that. Yeah, everyone, please do leave feedback because it is well received and appreciated. And like I said, it allows us to further improve these events for future conferences. So yeah, thanks all. Be sure to join us for further sessions on the 102 track. We've got 2 more tomorrow as well. But yeah, thanks again, Dan, and thanks everyone. And we'll wrap it up.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
Cheers, everyone.